George, we're coming up on episode 200, and we've never surveyed our audience. We don't know who is listening to us.
Well, how do you want to do it?
We can ask questions. For example, listener, are you a Mexican or a Mexicant?
Are you a vegan or are you a veg butt?
Are you student or student?
Are you a herbivore or a herb-a-bore?
Do you consider yourself a socialist or socialist?
Would you say you are straight or stranine?
Is your name call in or call out?
Are you a Hindu or a Hindon't?
What about your race? Are you a black out or a black in?
Are you a whitewash or an Asian wash?
Are you a mother or motherfucker?
You've ruined it. Why do you have to use the swear word?
It was just a question.
My dad doesn't like it when we curse.
Is your dad a daddy or a dandy?
Okay, enough already.
Is he ready or a red knee?
That doesn't make any sense, and this is getting silly.
Is it silly or still F?
Cut it out.
Cut it out or cut it in?
I am leaving now, Joe.
Leaving or lever?
Jesus.
Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at old movies and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Romaca. And today we're discussing Once Upon a Time in Mexico from 2003 and some historical context. This is a Patron's Choice episode. The patrons voted, and this is what they voted for. But first, podcasty stuff. You can reach us at ttswpod@gmail.com on Facebook, Letterboxd, and Counter Social. Please tell your friends about us and leave 5-star ratings everywhere. You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/dtswpod. Now, Joe, take us back to 2003.
Welcome to the History Corner. I initially was going to begin this segment with me speaking some Spanish. However, while my inability to sing has never stopped me from singing, my inability to string together a coherent Spanish sentence does give me pause. So I will spare all of us that embarrassment. And while this movie ostensibly has a plot involving Mexican politics, I'm going to avoid that as well. I just don't know enough about it. I do know that in July of 2003, there was an election that involved 500 seats in the lower house, which is called the Chamber of Deputies. The president at the time was Vicente Fox, whom I've heard of, but only because he would get in front of whatever microphone he could and tell Trump that Mexico wasn't going to pay for his fucking wall. And he did say fucking.
He sure did.
At that time, he was the ex-president. The Mexican Constitution, yes, other countries also have constitutions, banned re-election, so Mexican presidents serve only one 6-year term, and that's it. Here is a quick rundown of how their system works. Got this off the website for their Institute of National Elections. Federal executive power rests upon the president of the United Mexican States, in each one of the 31 states upon the governor for each entity and in the chief of government for the federal district. All of them are elected every 6 years and may not be re-elected. The federal legislative branch is vested upon the Union Congress, which is divided into an upper and a lower chamber. The legislative branch of the 32 states is single-chambered. Those belonging to the 31 states are called local congresses, and the one for the federal district is called Legislative Assembly. All legislators are elected for a 3-year period, except the members of the upper chamber who serve a 6-year period. They also have a Supreme Court, because America is not the only one to have one of those either. I just hope Mexico's Supreme Court isn't full of assholes like ours is. I'm looking at you, Roberts, Thomas, Alito, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Barrett. You're garbage human beings. I mean that sincerely.
That's a wonderful list for something. I would love to go down that list and something.
All right, you're going to get all of us in trouble, so let's just move on. Anyway, the election aside, I think the biggest event in Mexico in 2003 was the Colima earthquake of January 21st. Colima exists near the Central Pacific coast and was hit with a 7.6 tremor, resulting in 29 deaths and at least 300 injuries. On top of that, at least 10,000 persons were left homeless. Here is a piece for The Monitor, a newspaper in McAllen, Texas, that covered the events in real time. Headline, George.
City seeks to pick up the pieces. The destruction is like a war zone with fallen walls and streets blocked by rubble.
The newspaper says the tremor was 7.8 and it killed 25 human beings, but obviously those numbers would be changed as more information came out. I will quote from the news. In Colombia's state's capital, parts of downtown lay in ruins Wednesday, with collapsed adobe houses and cars crushed under piles of bricks. In all, 166 homes were destroyed in the capital, also called Colima, home to 230,000 people. Fox's government called a state of emergency throughout the state. Rescue workers in yellow suits dug through wrecked buildings using pneumatic drills and their bare hands to pull away concrete slabs in search of survivors, and passersby, relatives, and neighbors joined the battle to save those trapped. Maria Elena Ramirez, 47, was pulled from a pile of rubble that once was her home, along with her 7-year-old son, Jesus Martin, both buried when a wall crashed down on them. We were trapped. We were screaming for help, but no one could get us out until some people in a passing car stopped and pulled the rubble off us, recounted Ramirez, who was treated for multiple injuries. The scenes in the streets of this charming colonial-era city about 25 miles from the epicenter were of desolation. Along some streets, people gingerly entered damaged buildings to recover personal documents. The destruction is like a war zone, with fallen walls and streets blocked by rubble, Red Cross official Enrique de Jesus Rivera said.
That was the title.
We've had over 100 people brought in for treatment. Some are fractures and a few with very serious injuries, said Tomas Castillo, a Red Cross commander in Colombia. The Mexican army set up 6 shelters and sent dozens of medics, communications technicians, and engineers to the area. End quote. I thought I would leave it off with the Mexican army since they play a part in this movie as well. And not a flattering one, I think. Okay, George, tell us about Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Okay. This was written and directed by Robert Rodriguez.
The last Robert Rodriguez picture we saw for this podcast was Sin City in episode 129. God, we hated it so much.
So much. This one, nothing.
Yep.
Moving on. Blurbs, IMDb says Hitman El Mariachi becomes involved in international espionage involving a psychotic CIA agent and a corrupt Mexican general.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Amazon says a corrupt CIA agent recruits a tormented gunman to stop conspirators from assassinating the president of Mexico. Holy shit, is that incorrect? Amazon didn't even watch the fucking movie.
No, he wants him assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to stop it.
So we'll start with 2 characters and pepper the rest in later.
Yep.
El Mariachi, a legendary hitman who can play a mean guitar and look sexy as fuck while doing so. Played by Antonio Banderas.
Either I'm wrong or IMDb is, because from the looks of it, I've only seen Antonio Banderas in Interview with a Vampire.
I've seen him in Desperado, which was the prequel to the one we watched for this episode, and I've seen him in Evita and in Shrek 2 as the voice of Puss in Boots. Then we have Sands, a psychotic CIA agent whose idea of balance has a fulcrum in the third world. Played by Johnny Depp.
I've seen Alleged Wife Beater, Johnny Depp in 21 Jump Street, both the series and the cameo appearance he did for the movie adaptation. In addition to that, I've seen him take a few swings in From Hell, Sleepy Hollow, and Dead Man.
I've seen him in Edward Scissorhands, Don Juan DeMarco, Blow, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, which I quote fairly regularly, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, not the one we saw for the show, and Corpse Bride, which was a Tim Burton claymation type, not necroporn, and Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald.
And I'm sure he punched well above his weight in all of those.
Ayo. Like many stories do, this starts in a bar. Sands is getting information about El Mariachi from a one-eyed, flippant, overconfident informant, Bellini, played by Cheech Marin.
I saw Grindhouse, which Robert Rodriguez directed segments of, and he was in that. I may have seen him in Cannibal Run 2. I definitely saw him in Up in Smoke, but at the time I had never tried grass, and the whole movie is one long reefer joke. It was a painful experience. I'll be honest, I mainly know Cheech Marin from his being on a TV show with Don Johnson called Nash Bridges. It ran for 6 years, and I'm certain everyone forgot it ever existed.
I never watched that show, but I definitely knew it existed.
Okay.
I've seen Cheech in Ghostbusters 2, Desperado again, From Dusk Till Dawn, and he did voice work in Cars and The Lion King.
This is like one of the weirder movies where you seem to have seen a lot of the actors and stuff. This is not normal.
Yep, but you'll notice as we go on that a couple of the movies are going to show up a lot. Sands is paying $10,000, a civilized sum according to Bellini, for the recounting of an urban legend regarding a man who can wipe out entire towns.
They used to say he was the biggest Mexican they'd ever seen. It was total bullshit. He was 5'9", 5'10", tops. Which is no record, but bigger than most of us.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-bum. The tale he recounts is of the Barrio Cartel Massacre. It starts with a general who has it in for El Mariachi. We see an embellished gunfight in a bar where El Mariachi uses, amongst other more mundane weapons, a guitar shotgun to wipe out a mass of Marquez men. Marquez is the kind of general that the U.S. has typically loved to keep around in Latin America as long as they cut us in on their racket. He's played by Gerardo Vigil.
We've never seen him in anything else.
Even El Mariachi can end up in a bind, as he does in this scene. This is where we meet Carolina. She brings throwing knives and fists of fury to the gunfight. She's played by Selma Hayek.
I last saw Selma Hayek in Eternals. So far, the worst Marvel movie I've ever seen. I've heard her voice act in Sausage Party. She was also in Wild Wild West and Dogma.
In addition to Joe's last two there, I've seen her in Desperado and From Dusk Till Dawn. I could have sworn I had seen her in more because I had like an incredible crush on her for a while.
Well, she's a very beautiful woman, but Eternals was really bad.
That's where all the trouble began. She was with Marquez. And when Marquez saw that she was with the mariachi, well, he went crazy.
What now? It has been a while since I've seen Desperado, and I've never seen the original film El Mariachi. So I can only chalk this up to lazy writing or bad proofreading. It seems at best improbable that Carolina would have been working for or fucking Marquez for him to feel betrayed by finding her with El Mariachi. I mean, you don't really need a sexual motive for a corrupt general. Greed works just fine.
Yeah, I found a lot of stuff in this film I didn't understand, but go on.
Anyway, the fight ends with Marquez somehow surviving a shotgun blast to the heart from Carolina. We very briefly see Carolina dead on the ground and Marquez firing the shot before Bellini reiterates that for whatever Sands is doing, El Mariachi is who he needs to do it. There is a lot of flashing back and whatnot, so I'll get that out of the way now. Not only did Marquez get his revenge and kill Carolina, and put lots of bullets into El Mariachi, he killed their daughter too.
Was that really necessary? I mean, from a plot area, did that happen in the previous films? You said you saw the prequel to this, right?
I know I've seen it. I don't remember anything from it. Nothing rang true from this either.
It seemed to me like, you mentioned lazy writing. I think that's what it came off across as to me. It's like, oh, the dead wife, he's got to get revenge. Also, on top of everything else, his wife is dead. Which I always hate the whole dead wife thing. And also the child is also dead. What would have been wrong if his wife had been alive? I don't understand why was Salma Hayek busy and they just didn't have her for the whole film? Is that it? So they had to kill her off? Because she only had those particular scenes they had to film and they couldn't film her anything else?
I don't know, Joe, but I will give it this much credit. At least they gave her a name.
That's true. The dead wife does have a name.
Yep.
Unlike some other films. Like your wife's just dead and they never name her.
Where you get it, John G. killed my wife across your chest instead of whatever your wife's name was.
Exactly.
As the credits show on the screen, we go to a Mexican village that seems to be entirely built around the industry of making acoustic guitars. Whether or not that was always the case is brought into question by the giant palisade that exists there. A guitar maker hands El Mariachi a guitar for testing.
You know what would have been good? If they had on the guitar, this guitar kills fascists. Because literally, his guitar can shoot. And we do see guitars shooting bullets out of it. Not only just his guitar, his friend's guitar as well. It should have said, this guitar kills fascists. Would have been perfect.
El Mariachi takes the guitar off to play, and a whole host of baddies arrive armed to the teeth. Their leader approaches the head guitar maker and says he hears this place is a town of gunmen. Doesn't look that way to me, but whatever.
Yeah, where are the other gunmen?
Good question, Joe. The leader of the armed visitors is Kukui. He'll work for the highest bidder as long as your bid doesn't come with aspersions on his Mexicanness. He's played by Danny Trejo.
Also saw him in Grindhouse.
287 movie acting credits, with 26 in some stage of production right now.
Yep, and I've seen him in almost nothing.
And I've seen him in Desperado and From Dusk Till Dawn, which we'll hear again, Con Air, and Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. When they won't give up El Mariachi immediately, Kukui orders his men to kill the guitar maker who had presented the guitar to El Mariachi. Kukui readies to shoot the town leader, but stops when El Mariachi whistles from atop the palisade and appears to give himself up. Why El Mariachi watched all of this happen and didn't give up before they shot the first guy, I will never know.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as well. Jesus, why did you do that earlier? And why would the guy even know if I shoot this person, El Mariachi will show up? I don't know if these guys know each other. It's entirely possible going to shot that guy. No one would have showed up.
And as if the movie itself is wondering that same thing, when El Mariachi tries to give the guitar to the surviving guitar maker, that guy says the dead guy made it just for him and that he should keep it.
Sure, why not? That makes sense.
Yep. Kukui says that he is honored by the presence of El Mariachi. Under heavy guard in the back of a truck, they drive him away. Now we go to the Barrio estate. Barrio is the head of the titular Barrio drug cartel. Before we meet the man himself, we'll meet his assistant, Billy. This chihuahua-toting aide to a ruthless drug lord tries to warn off a new recruit, but in English, which apparently nobody in the Barrio cartel speaks. He's played by Mickey Rourke.
He was also in Sin City, episode 129. I've also seen him in Iron Man 2, which wasn't as good as Iron Man 1, but was still better than Eternals. I also saw him in Angel Heart. I think that's the first movie I've ever seen Mickey Rourke in. Wait, that's not true. I probably first saw him in Diner or 1941. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Barrio is meeting the new recruit who looks a lot like a Mexican version of Barrio himself, who is played by Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe often plays bad guys, but the best performance in a movie I've seen of him was as a good, decent man in Florida Project. Really fine film. Of course, I've seen him in the Spider-Man movies. I've seen him in Nightmare Alley, The French Dispatch, Motherless Brooklyn, The Lighthouse, Platoon. And for this podcast, he was in Inside Man, episode 65.
And episode 67. He was Christ Almighty himself in The Last Temptation of Christ.
Oh, how could I forget that?
How could you?
I tend to forget Christ. That's why I'm an atheist.
He was also in The Boondock Saints, did voice work in Finding Nemo, and was in The Fault in Our Stars, the movie adaptation of the book that has been sitting there behind Joe for years.
I've read it.
Still been sitting there. We watch as Barrio's personal plastic surgeon feels up the new guy's face. Between that and the similar looks, we are definitely looking at some kind of face-off situation here.
Indeed. By the way, I understand this, the production is Mexican, the director is Mexican, etc., 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 but is this Willem Dafoe sort of playing brownface? Or is it legit here because everybody else is okay?
He looks very spray-tanned.
Yeah, I didn't know what to make of that. I didn't know if to call that blackface or not. Literally, it's not blackface, but you know what I mean? It's like, he's a white man playing a Hispanic, and he's even got sort of darker skin.
Yeah. Kukui brings El Mariachi to a restaurant to meet Sands. And this is where we get the line that I remembered from this film that makes me laugh every damn time I hear it.
Alert the Barrio cartel that El has come out of hiding.
I don't think we should.
Are you a Mexican or a Mexicant?
Every time. Sands explains the plot of the movie to El Mariachi by way of analogy. The analogy is that the pork that he's eating is so good that Sands has to go kill the cook afterwards in order to maintain the balance in the country with regards to that particular dish being delicious. In terms of geopolitics, this means that while Marquez is a shitty, horrible human being, the fact that the president of Mexico is not is a problem for the United States, and thus the president needs to be killed. Marquez is planning a coup d'etat, so that's going to happen. However, the United States does not want Marquez in power. It will be up to El Mariachi, once the president is dead, to prevent Marquez from taking power by killing him before he can. You with that, Joe? Does that all make sense?
No.
No? Good. Okay.
No, it really doesn't.
It's ridiculous. El Mariachi is in. Sands tells him to meet at a nearby church in an hour for more instructions, and then goes and kills the cook.
All right. Now, I got a lot of questions besides the fact that that plot makes absolutely no sense. Why would El Mariachi agree to this?
He says it later. The only thing he has in this is revenge.
Yeah, but he can do that without involving himself with this asshole and letting him kill the cook, which the guy announced to him, and they, oh yeah, go kill the cook. The poor cook.
Yeah.
He could have just shot him and then went on and did his revenge thing. Everything would have still happened with this guy dead.
Mm-hmm. But we wouldn't have a rest of the movie to talk about.
There's no reason for him to just like, I'll go along with your plan, which I'm not going to anyway. He could have just shot him, then went and go find what's-his-face and got in the shootout with him, because the guy would have gone after him anyway. It makes no sense.
Yeah, why are you following this fucking American asshole's lead? He goes all patriotic later and says, we're sons of Mexico. Not in this moment, you're not.
Also, I guess we're supposed to think it's funny, but I didn't like the fact that he gets up and just goes in and shoots the cook. I don't know why that bothered me so much, but I really hated that.
It should bother you as a decent human being. It should bother you.
I made you a delicious meal. Murder me. Because you have some weird fucked up idea that's got great balance? What the fuck? What are you talking about? And listen, I've never been to Mexico, but I understand it has laws there. Remember, I just read the whole thing about the Constitution. This motherfucker, American no less, walks in and shoots a Mexican national, and nobody says anything? He's not arrested? No one comes and gets him? Nothing? Come on.
Speaking of laws, then we go to a Mexican Federal Police Force assembly, where the chief will completely ignore that the lady cop in the room wants the assignment. At first blush, this seems sexist. However, this particular lady cop happens to be the daughter of Barrio, and maybe the chief knew that, and that's why he didn't want her in charge of the assignment. Oops, that's a spoiler. I shouldn't have said that yet, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that is also a weird scene. It's set up like, because you think initially, well, he's being sexist to her, so she must be a hero, and later she's going to solve the case and prove herself. No, it's good he doesn't give her an assignment, because she's horrible.
That lady cop is Dredged, and she's played by Eva Mendes.
I've seen her in The Other Guys and Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans.
And I saw her in Too Fast, Too Furious.
Was she fast or was she furious?
Yes, Joe.
Okay.
Now we meet the president of Mexico, as he gives a speech about how they are not going to let the drug lords run the country. His advisor tries to talk him back from that position, and absolutely not, because he's in bed with the baddies and is going to betray his president later. El Presidente is not the worst politician around, apparently. He's played by Pedro Armendariz Jr.
I saw him in Amistad and Tombstone.
He was in The Mexican, the movie that I got the actors in this confused with.
Ah, okay. That it also have people shooting up the place?
That's the one with Julia Roberts and Brad Pitt.
That has James Gandolfini in it as well, doesn't it?
Yes, I think so.
That's so funny. I know the cast. I've never seen the movie. I don't know why I know this. Anyway, go on.
The advisor is a filthy rat, played by Julio Oscar Machoso.
Another Grindhouse alum. Also saw him in Glass Shield, and he was in Bad Boys, episode 38.
He was in Toys, a movie I am definitely putting on our list.
Wait a minute, Toys is
Robin Williams,
picture, right?
Uh-huh.
Oh, then I've seen him in that. I saw that. Oh, I'll put that on the list. That was a terrible movie. If it didn't work then, it's not going to work now, but
I saw it as a kid. I don't know if it might have been a bad movie, but I still want to do it for the show. El Mariachi has a daydream about him and Carolina running from gangsters while chained together. How he is still alive when he's falling asleep in broad daylight in public places like that, as such a recognizable person that apparently everybody wants to kill, is beyond me.
What I liked, granted, it's a dream, so I assume it didn't really happen, because he does stuff with her, with that chain and them hanging off buildings.
Yeah.
That would have dislocated both their shoulders.
The first unbelievable thing is waking up like that, surprised.
Like, how did these chains get on us? I have no idea.
Like the gangsters snuck into their rooms, put the chains on them, and then tried to kill them.
Next door, they're shooting at them through the window, so they put the chains on them, left, went to the place across the street, and then decided to shoot at them. Well, that's why it was a dream.
Yep. He meets Sands in the church in a confessional. Then Sands says, wait a minute, and leaves so that the trap that he set up for El Mariachi in the form of a dozen or so armed gunmen can spring. This, Sands will later call a test, and tells El Mariachi that he passed. The passing of that test resulted in the casualties of all of those gunmen and the guitar that the man had made for him, which held a sawed-off shotgun inside of it.
A test. Okay, sure. Can you imagine? I got hired for this job, and this motherfucker pulls a stunt like this, and again, why would Mariachi just shoot him? He's very annoying.
It's Joker-esque. It's very Joker, like breaking the pool with a stick and being like, tryouts.
Yeah. Like, fuck you, bam. I mean, Mariachi has no problem killing people. I don't know why he never shoots Sands, not even once. Doesn't even threaten to shoot him, I don't believe.
Sands is wandering through the streets of Mexico talking to himself about how big and important he is and how masterful he is at orchestrating everything and playing all the different pieces against each other. He's interrupted by a boy on a bicycle selling chiclets. This boy will be important later, so I'll introduce him now as the Chickle Boy. I didn't write the credits. Played by Tony Valdez.
Don't know his work.
He has been successful on Mexican TV. Good for him.
Okay. Hopefully he doesn't play someone who has to help the white man throughout his career, because that's all he does in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck my fellow Mexicans. What does the white man need? I'm going to get myself nearly shot because of the white man. This is a very Uncle Tommy little boy. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Then Sands meets a retired FBI agent in an open-air cafe. Seated nearby are Barrio and his surgeon, both being responsible for that agent's partner's death years ago. With this information, Sands convinced the character credited as Jorge FBI to take up the case and go after Barrio. Jorge FBI is retired. Or is he? Yes, he is, but that doesn't really matter. Played by Ruben Blades.
I've seen him in Mo Better Blues.
And I've got nothing. In some bar somewhere, we endure a short Enrique Iglesias music video so that El Mariachi can get his famed weaponized guitar case.
Do you think that was in his contract? Iglesias says, listen, I'm going to be in this movie. You've got to have a scene where I'm singing. I will not appear unless I get to sing in this movie at least once.
I wouldn't doubt it. This item has been cared for by his two friends, Lorenzo and Fideo, who are the last characters that we will be introducing. Lorenzo is another mariachi assassin with looks to rival El, played by Enrique Iglesias.
He was also in Wild Wild West, Hot Tub Time Machine. I don't know any of his songs.
I can't remember any of his songs either. I know who he is. Can't recall a single frickin' song.
Nope.
And Fideo is the shortest mariachi assassin, whose focus is on his drinking more than anything else. Played by Marco Leonardi.
I don't know his work either, but I do want to ask you about Fido. Now, they make a big deal about the fact that he drinks. Does that in any way play a part in the plot?
No.
No, it doesn't. So why is it there?
Good question, Joe. At a bullfighting ring, Sands meets with the president's advisor. Sands, who is wearing a hilarious t-shirt that just says CIA Central Intelligence Agency, tells the advisor that victory is still valid even if you have cheated and rigged the game. Then he has Kukui hit a button that tases the matador so that he can get gored by the bull. The money that they win in this is what they use to bribe the advisor to betray the president to Marquez once the coup gets underway.
Okay, sure.
Now we are back in that bar that we started in so that Sands can continue trying to get information out of Bellini. This time about Barrio.
I kind of almost could have the tiniest smidgen of respect for you. Almost. But you need to stop farting around. Now, do you have the information that I need on Barrio, or do you not?
I have what you need. I'm just enjoying this temporary position of power. I make you nervous?
You know that withholding vital information from a federal officer is a serious offense, especially when that officer has paid handsomely for it and wouldn't think twice about ripping that patch off your eye hole and skull-fucking you to death.
That skull-fucking remark got Bellini's attention, but I'm wondering about the other thing. Dude, you're in Mexico. You don't have jurisdiction there. For a Mexican national to not give you information is no kind of offense on any legal level. In fact, him giving you information so that you can orchestrate a coup would be treason in the Mexican legal framework and nothing at all in the USA framework.
And I don't even know that I'm obligated to give a federal agent information myself as an American citizen. If he came up to me like, I demand this information. Oh, get my lawyer. I don't have to tell you shit.
There is a obstructing that, like, you do have a legal obligation to tell things, it's just not things that are incriminating to yourself.
I can still get a lawyer. He's just looking at him like he's just a man. I want this information. I can say, well, you know what? I want a lawyer first before I say anything. I would have that legal right. He just can't demand. I'm sitting in a bar and I'm just going to give him information. Fuck you.
Before the conversation can go any further, the waitress arrives and accidentally spills drink on Sands' arm. Well, not his arm, the fake arm that he keeps on the table so that he can have his other arm with the gun pointed at whoever's across from him. For some reason, this means he can no longer work with Bellini, so he just shoots him a bunch under the table. Then he gets up and shoots the waitress for good measure.
Again, how is this possible? They have laws in Mexico. You just can't go around shooting people, especially some goddamn white man. They gotta notice that sort of thing. They don't care for people to come, and everybody doesn't care for some foreigner to come into the country and start shooting up the place. It really pisses them off.
That poor fucking waitress. Like, holy shit. Oh, what the fucking...
None of that made any sense. Not at all. The cook, the waitress,
It made no sense, and it made me angry. Duh. He drags Bellini's body to a river. In his eye hole, Sands finds a bag with the information that he was looking for.
Because of course he does.
And then he checks the rectum just for funsies. Because he's great. He's a great character. Sands meets Adrez in, Sands' apartment, according to the scene titles. He fills her in on the plot so far. The president is on a crusade against the Brillo cartel, who has hired Marquez to stage a coup. Sands has El Mariachi as insurance to make sure Marquez never takes power. He needs Adrez to detain Brillo so that he can't take the reins of power either. Sands and Adrez can walk away with the 20 million pesos that Brillo was paying Marquez. Basically, Sands is betraying everybody for money and doesn't know that Adrez is Brillo's daughter.
Which you would think, as a CIA agent, that sort of information he would be privy to.
Yeah.
I mean, the man didn't plan for his daughter to be undercover his whole life, so you would know how many daughters he has, how many children. Although, I have to say, at least his daughter does something, unlike Into the Dragon, where the guy has daughters and it plays no part in the plot at all.
The mariachis enter the presidential palace in order to get familiar with the people that they'll be seeing there and learn where the back entrance is so that they can do their part and kill Marquez. The guards are rather attentive and want to make sure that they are actual mariachis and not assassins. Not that those two things are necessarily mutually exclusive.
All right.
Awesome.
That part was funny. Inside, there's a party of some sort with people hobnobbing all around. Fideo asks El Mariachi if he's going to tell the president that he's a dead man. Instead, El Mariachi respectfully asks the president if there's anything in particular he would like to hear. The president looks squarely at him and says some song title in Spanish, I don't know. The mariachi nods and then starts playing it. And I thought it telling for the character of the president that he didn't stop to question the appropriateness or social hierarchical difference between him and a mariachi playing music at his gathering. He just answered the question. I kind of dug that.
Oh, man, you look for the simplest things, but okay.
I had to find something in this show. Jorge FBI scrapes the retired stamp off of his FBI badge, then goes to tail Barrillo's assistant Billy to a hot dog stand.
The FBI operates in the United States, so what does it matter if he has an FBI badge in Mexico? He has no jurisdiction there. So why wipe that off? He doesn't need the badge.
Okay,
it doesn't work.
The FBI could have jurisdiction if they are working with the Mexican government to apprehend a United States national.
I guess.
Which Billy is. So there is a hypothetical where the FBI would be tailing him and tracking him down.
Right, but he would have an assistant, a Mexican national with him. He doesn't. He's by himself. Something I would think someone like Billy would know.
They wouldn't necessarily have that because a Mexican national and a U.S. national walking around together wearing clothes like FBI agents do would look suspicious as fuck if you're the guy that they would presumably be after.
I don't know. I don't think you just... Oh, well, whatever. Anyway, let's go on.
Billy ends up surrendering to him and agreeing to help him for leniency. Turns out Billy isn't happy being strongman to a psychopath and has wanted out for some time. Kukui switches sides, not being a fan of Sands. After a bunch of gunfighting and car chasing, Kukui ends up nailing El Mariachi in the forehead with a sleep dart, capturing him.
Which was surprisingly easy. Considering everything else we've seen him do, you'd think that would be difficult. I'm like, no, just walked up to him, hit him with a dart, boom, done.
At Barrillo's estate, Barrillo tells Billy to cut the fingers off of a piano teacher that was critical of him.
A lot of casual cruelty to the service staff.
Yep.
The cook, the waitress, the poor piano player, these people just doing their jobs.
Not to mention all the doctors and nurses that are going to bite it in a minute.
True.
Then Kukui shows up to tell Barrio about Sands, to deliver El Mariachi to him, and to offer his services. For this, Barrio has Billy garrote Kukui to death. Once he's awake, El Mariachi escapes because he's fucking El Mariachi. Barrio goes in for surgery to swap places with his doppelganger. This results in a lot of doctors and nurses dying. Jorge runs in to stop it and ends up getting captured because Adredge is Barrio's daughter, so he was screwed from the start. Then Sands gets captured at a restaurant, and Barrio has Sands' eyes removed from his head. He's let loose, blinded, and runs into Chickle Boy, who helps him get to the palace where the coup is underway.
Why do you suppose they decided, well, we'll just take your eyes? I suppose just killing them.
He says so. He says, you haven't done anything worth death, but you have seen too much, so I'm going to make sure you can't do that again.
That doesn't make any sense, because he can still tell what he's seen.
It makes enough sense for the movie, for this movie, for the level of this movie.
It's just stupid. This is a stupid movie. It's so goddamn stupid. Anyway, go ahead.
The mariachis deploy, their own mission having evolved into a combination of revenge and protecting the president. It's a lot of guns and fighting, with the end result being that the bad guys are all dead and the good guys are all alive and Sands is blind. Like, I was surprised at how quickly the summary was going once we were past the exposition stages. Once things get going, it's more of a watching movie than a thinking and writing about it movie. The end.
Well, let's talk about, because we were discussing this before we started recording, what are we supposed to make of Sands? Because to me, he seems like an asshole who should be killed at the end of the picture, and he's not. Now, yes, he loses his eyes, but he's also rescued by this little boy who I don't understand what the point of that kid is, other than his little, I don't know, his would-be child. I mean, I just didn't understand the whole thing of his character. Why does he live?
I don't know, Joe. Fuck him.
If anybody should have died at the end of this movie, it should have been him. And not only does he live, it's like I got the impression the film is supposed to cheer his living. Because the last time we see him, he puts his hand up because he thinks he's dead, and he puts his hand up so the boy can come over and, I don't know, do what? Kid's not a surgeon or something, but he helps him go somewhere with his eyes cut out.
If Sands is supposed to be the representative of how the United States has been involved in Latin American politics, then he was the most accurately portrayed character in this movie. But I don't think this movie is that deep. So he's just a bastard, and I don't want to think about him anymore.
I do wonder about one thing. I don't remember. What the hell happens to Mickey Rourke's character?
He's fine.
But what, I mean, does he...
He's in the whatever throne room, I'm going to call it. And Barrio's like, hey, are you going to do anything about this? And he's like, you'll have to pay me a lot more to do anything.
Right. Then there's the shooting and everything. And what, does he just walk out? He just seems to disappear from the movie.
Yep.
There's no real resolution, even though he wants to get caught and go away and go back to America.
Yep.
I don't know. All right, George, does this still work?
No, this didn't work in the first place. Fuck. Holy shit. This movie's all over the place. It doesn't make sense. The plot lines are all twisted. It has so much in there. It doesn't have to be there. Fuck this movie, Joe.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But you liked it when you first saw it, right?
Yeah, because I was dumber then.
I never saw it, and I'm grateful for that. Although I want to thank the patrons for picking it. We appreciate your input. We almost never like the patrons' choices, I realize.
Well, I have a hypothesis about that, is the movies that you put on those lists, because all they have to choose from are movies that you've chosen.
Right, but those are some good movies. We could have seen Last Tango in Paris. We could have seen American Werewolf in London. And they picked this picture, so that's not on me.
No, it's fine.
I was pulling for the London movie. And if we
are not do these movies that we like work. We are, does this still work? And whatever this happens to be is what we will perform judgment on, even if it sucks. Now, granted, I'll say nice things too. This movie was fantastic to watch with my eyes. Like, my eyes loved it. Lots of good gunfights, lots of flashiness, lots of interesting looking characters. The acting wasn't a problem in this.
No.
It was the story. It was garbage.
Robert Rodriguez can direct a movie, but his plots are terrible. I mean, I thought Sin City was well directed, but God, I hated that movie. I didn't hate this movie as much, but
That's only because you couldn't understand half the words in it, Joe. If you understood all the words, you'd be fuming.
I know that he and Tarantino have done work together, they did Grindhouse together, and I can understand why they seem to be in copacetic. Just for some reason, I can sit through a Tarantino movie, and I just don't seem to like Robert Rodriguez. I don't know. Maybe I'm racist.
Maybe.
Let's see. This was a patron's choice, as we said, and the poll for next month's film is already up on Patreon. The choices are Mississippi Burning, 1988, Deep Cover, 1992, and Spring Breakers, 2012. If you want to vote but are not a patron, you can fix that by becoming one at patreon.com/DTSWpod. Now, George, what's up next?
Next week, and we've already recorded this episode, we will be talking about Enter the Dragon from 1973.
You told me when we were recording this that I was not supposed to make those sounds because it was racist.
Probably. I probably said that.
Not probably. You definitely said that. And now you're doing it. Interesting.
Maybe I'm racist too.
So I guess for this episode, I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Romaka. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's no one around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
Does it have a name?
We call him El, as in though.
I know what it means. Thank you.
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Romaka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
The text, the voice typing, every time I said burrito, it turned it into burrito.
What food or dessert did you love as a child but hate as an adult?
What's the longest trip you've taken?
Are you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
What's a bad habit that you're trying to break?
In the movie Groundhog Day, Bill Murray has to repeat the same day over and over. George, what would your Groundhog Day be? George, what do you do if you witness child abuse in the street?